Welcome everyone to our Fair Housing Rights for Homebuyers. Thanks so much for joining us today. This training is sponsored by a generous grant from the MISHDA, or the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. Just some general housekeeping things. This is a webinar, so everyone is muted and your cameras are off, so we will not be able to see or hear you. If you need to ask a question, please use the Q&A feature to ask those questions. If you put them in the chat, we may miss them, so that's just a note there. We'll also have time at the end for some more detailed questions if you have something that may be more convoluted, that may need some additional information from us. This is also being recorded, and we will make it available to everyone who attends and registers. You can see that in about a week or so from us, an email from Lindsay Owens. And then evaluations should pop up in your browser automatically. We will also provide that link at the end of the training. So welcome. I am Brianna Miranda. I am one of two education and outreach coordinators at the Fair Housing Center of West Michigan. And with me today is our Director of Education Outreach, Liz Keegan.
Hello. Thank you for signing on tonight and joining us.
So today we will be talking about fair housing and home buyers and what that can look like, housing discrimination. So first we'll look at what is fair housing and who is protected, and then we'll look at the different aspects of buying a home and what discrimination can look like there. So we'll look at sales, lending, appraisals, harassment, and then we'll go over how you can report discrimination to us and what it looks like to file a complaint. And then we'll take, again, questions at the end and throughout, some clarifying questions. So if you are new to who we are the Fair Housing Center of West Michigan. Our mission is to prevent and eliminate illegal housing discrimination, ensure equal housing opportunity, and promote inclusive communities. We have two different facets to our organization. We have our enforcement and advocacy, which they conduct the investigations and take intakes. And then education, which is Liz and I, and then Lindsay, who is on the back end, making sure if anybody has any issues, they're taking care of that. And we provide education to both the industry and to home seekers in the community. Our agency was founded in 1980. We are a private nonprofit organization. We cannot provide legal advice. We have no attorneys or lawyers on staff. And really we really like to promote and just have people think about, why fair housing matters, and where you live really affects how you live. So having choice is just really crucial to that. So some things that we don't do, we do not address landlord tenant matters. We don't handle building and code maintenance. We don't teach any home buyers classes or credit counseling. We don't work on strictly affordable housing. However, there can be an intersection there with fair housing. We don't do any foreclosure prevention, and we do not offer housing or refer housing just based on what our agency does by investigating housing. So we strictly just do fair housing and housing discrimination complaints and education. There are some additional agencies in the state, and those are linked there. And I'm going to go to the next slide, which has the map of them all. So this is the breakdown of the fair housing centers within the state. We are the purple area there, the lighter purple area. So we cover 38 counties. And we are located in Kent County. So we have a lot of ground area to cover, but we are very dedicated to it, and we really try to be in the spaces that we can in those areas. So if you are a partner and you're located in one of the light purple areas and you need materials or have questions about anything, definitely feel free to reach out to our agency. So first up, we'll talk about some fair housing laws and protections. So what is fair housing? Fair housing is the right to choose housing free from unlawful discrimination. And owning a home is pretty fundamental to the American dream. So, hindering that process by being discriminated is really shouldn't be a thing. It really should only be whether or not you can afford it, not who you are as a person. So that is really crucial to us. Again, having choice in your housing and, the ability to the things that you can control when looking for a house. Fair housing laws protect against discrimination in any type of housing transaction. So tonight we'll be talking mostly on the sales and home buying, but it also does protection in rentals, and then zoning and land use as well. And then it is illegal based on protected classes under federal, state, and local fair housing laws, which we will talk about those protected classes in a second here. So protected classes are based on attributes of different people. And like I said, they're based on federal, state, and local laws. So federal is going to be across the nation, that race, color, national origin, so where you are from, religion, gender, which includes gender identity and sexual orientation, disability status, which includes physical or mental disabilities, and familial status, which is the presence of children under the age of 18 in the home. It's a pretty broad definition, but which is great for the different types of family types. And then in Michigan, so if you are outside of Michigan, these are not pertaining to you, but I do believe we have all Michigan folks on with us today. So age is protected if you can enter into a legal, a legal transaction. And then marital status, so whether or not you are married, widowed, separated, or divorced. And then newly, sexual orientation and gender identity or expression are protected as of February of 2024. And then additionally, last June, race in Michigan was updated. The language was updated to be inclusive of hairstyles that are associated with race. And then there are some exemptions for some of these protected classes based on for some senior housing, which we won't get into tonight. But if you have any questions about that, we're happy to answer that.
Yeah, it just brought to mind, Bree, a case where a sale was blocked potentially because of an illegal age restriction that was in a condo bylaw. I think they set an age limit of 48 and older, which is not senior housing. 62 and older and 55 and older are acceptable legal age restrictions in Michigan. And both the lender and the real estate agent called our agent on this, called our office on the same day to ask questions about that particular barrier. And as it so happened, the condo board wanted to deny a sale because the husband of the couple who had made the offer and were moving through the process to purchase was 6 months younger than 48 years old. And so they were prepared to deny the sale. And they had a loan also going through the bank, and they were reviewing the bylaws as par for the course. That's what the bank will do when processing a loan, and they found the restriction, the illegal age restriction, in writing. So the bank also called. So it can turn up in unexpected places as a protection.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, that is it's such an interesting case. And then there also are protected classes, as I said, locally. So we've listed some based on who we had registered for this class tonight. So if you're located in Grand Rapids, some additional protected classes would be source of lawful income. So different types of income or different types of so like vouchers, alimony, child support, those types of things would have to be counted as income when applying. So, and you can't be denied for those reasons. Additionally, public assistance recipient status. Genotype, which is a different one. It's your genetic makeup. We don't really have a case on that, but some of these protected classes go across different venues other than housing. Medical condition, height and weight. And then in Holland, there is education, source of income again, height and weight. Kentwood and Wyoming also have source of income and height and weight. Traverse City has height and weight. And then if you're not listed here, it's important to check with your locality. We've provided some links there in which you can look up some local laws to see if you have some additional protected classes to be aware of.
I saw people registering from Detroit, Kalamazoo, Lansing, and East Lansing. And so if you're on the call, I just want to highlight those are cities that do have local fair housing laws that have additional fair housing protections. Sometimes you'll see a local law that doesn't add any additional protections, but those communities do. So it's definitely worth reaching out to find that information to either your local fair housing center, or you're welcome to contact us.
Thanks, Liz. And then briefly, we'll talk about some proposed Michigan legislation. Back in October of last year, there was a source of income protection that passed the Senate, and it included, again, some different sources of income that I already mentioned. So like housing vouchers, emergency rental assistance, SSI, and other types of subsidy programs. It does not include income derived in an illegal matter, and it should be provided on an ongoing basis. It was amended to provide exemptions for landlords with less than 5 units. And then the housing agency tasked with the handling vouchers must also approve the applications within 30 days. It was referred to the Michigan Judiciary Committee, and that was being held on April 17th, so recently. So you can probably keep an eye out for that to see where that's going to go. So what is covered? What type of housing is covered in fair housing laws? It's really all types of housing, but we've listed some here. Houses and condos, which we see often condos misunderstand that they are not included, and because it's they're governed by their local boards and stuff, but they are still covered under fair housing laws. Even empty lots and construction sites, mobile homes and manufactured homes, cooperatives, apartments, transitional housing and homeless shelters, and public housing authorities. So these are some of the atypical ones that people may not think of. People generally think of, single family homes or apartment complexes and things like that, but it's really any type of housing. So how does fair housing apply to home sales and financing? When you're looking at the law, difference in treatment is, the most important thing to think about when you're considering fair housing laws, and how you're treated and how people are treated differently based on those protected classes. A best practice we always say is that equal treatment needs to be across the board. There are some exceptions for people with disabilities, which we'll talk about in terms of reasonable accommodations and modifications. Liz will talk a little bit about that in the middle of the training, but essentially everyone should be treated equally across the board, and any difference in treatment kind of sends a red flag.
And if anyone is not sure if something is a fair housing issue or if a group is protected, feel free to reach out to us at the Fair Housing Center. We really recommend that people get to know the protected classes and kind of build your own list. But we're happy to assist with that part of the homework of finding out, what laws apply and where the protections exist. We are very happy to help with that.
Yeah, and off that note, again, if it just feels like a weird scenario, you can always call our office, and we will always make sure that we give the best referral that we can. So we may not be able to help, but hopefully the next call that you make will be able to help you with your situation. And, oftentimes it can be that a situation may on the forefront may not seem like discrimination, but if you let us know more details, it could be that way. We've had some sexual harassment cases come that way where a woman was just looking to move, and that's why she called us, and it ended up she needed to move because her landlord was sexually harassing her. So, why are fair housing rights so important? Not only does it just it creates a bad environment, but it is really harmful on your community. It reinforces segregated living patterns, and prevents diverse neighborhoods. Often local economies can be affected from this by decreasing in property values, disinvestment in the community in general, a reduced population, diminishing of business activities and types of businesses in the communities. Home ownership can be threatened by this. Again, having these rights creates an ability to have an inclusive community, and fostering a stable community as well. It also affects housing affects every aspect of your life. It can often determine your access to education, employment, transportation, healthy environments, health, hospitals and the healthcare system. It's housing is really the center of every aspect that your life touches. So having that choice is really important. And we'll talk about some cases where, discrimination happened and it did change, the person's life in the end. So moving forward, I'll talk about some sales discrimination, and then I'll hand it over to Liz to talk about the other aspects of home buying. So what is prohibited when it comes to sales? The make, print, or publish of any advertisements in the sale of a dwelling that indicates any preference or limitations or discrimination that is protected. The discouragement of a dwelling, maybe assigning a person to a particular neighborhood or building. And that's what we call steering, which we'll watch a video about, based on what the person looks like or their attributes, moving them to different neighborhoods based on what the seller or even may deem them, or even the realtor may deem them is the best for them. Again, it should be what the person who's buying the home, what their choice is. Falsely denying the housing is available, that is protected. Refusing to negotiate, imposing different prices for the sale, the flat out refusal to sell, and then any other opportunities that would make the housing unavailable would also be protected. And then any kind of different terms or conditions of it for sale based on the person would also be prohibited. And these are all, again, based because of a protected class. Additionally, if there's different qualification criteria or applications used, if the person is being harassed, if the person is being shown different housing services or facilities, not everyone is shown the same opportunities or amenities. If there are different privileges that are being limited based at the dwelling or within the community. I know there was a case with a pool. I think it was a family was not limited or was limited from using the pool. That would be an example of discrimination.
Yeah, their key card to access the locked door to get into the pool area was, what do they say, disarmed or, shut off because the condo board found out that the couple was living together and was not married. Everyone else was able to come and go from the pool area and use their key cards, but that family's was taken away from them, and it's part of what they paid for. So it's, again, as Bree said, it's that protected class, which was marital status in this case, and then it was one of these differences in treatment.
Mm-hmm. And then if there's any persuading or trying to persuade homeowners to sell their homes by suggesting that people of a particular protected class are about to move in to the neighborhood, which would be called blockbusting, and then refusing to provide or discriminate in the terms of conditions of homeownership I'm sorry, home insurance because of a protected characteristic of the owner and or the occupant. So there's different ways that discrimination can appear when you're looking at the sale of a home or buying a home. I'm going to show a quick video on Sarah's story. I'm starting it from a midpoint. That link is provided to you, so you are welcome to watch the whole video. She talks about her experience at an employment, and then that kind of transitions into her housing experience.
I'm appealing. I was in the projects for 5 years. Thank you.
How would you like your eggs?
My son was only 2 years old at the time, and mice started coming up in my kitchen. They were on the floor, running all in the cabinet. I had to take his bedroom and use that for the kitchenette. It was just terrible. I just prayed my way through it. It was hard, but I prayed my way through it. I knew that I wanted to get me and my son and go. I wanted a better life for him. I wanted a better environment for him. I went to a class that gives you training on how to buy a home. This one right here, the gray one. Oh boy, was I happy. And I was looking at my little son, we're getting ready to get out of here. And after you finish the class, you needed to contact a real estate agent. So we began to search for homes. And each time I'm like, okay, here's another list, mister. And he was like, oh, Sarah, we'll check that out later. I have some homes I want to show you. Weeks and weeks and weeks done went by. In fact, months had went by. I said, I don't understand why this guy will not take me into the suburbs. That's where I want to live. I knew that there was something wrong. I said, why are you treating me like this? And he responded, when white people see black people in their neighborhoods, they get offended. I didn't know what to do. I was totally in shock. My mind went back to the hotel when I was in my 20s. And I said, enough is enough. The first thing I can tell a victim, you have to make that first step, calling fair housing. That's what I did. They were very encouraging, and I appreciate everybody that played a part for me and my son to get the settlement. I believe that there are thousands, probably millions of people that are going through racial discrimination. And the only thing that I can tell them is you need to voice it. If it's not addressed, how can it be healed?
If you believe you
So that is Sarah's story. Oops, sorry about that, guys. Which is a pretty straightforward sign of discrimination on a sales front and steering somebody to a different neighborhood based on their characteristics.
It was so brave of her to come forward and allow the Fair Housing Center of Indiana to share her story, because it can be that obvious. Some of the cases that we're going to share are going to be hard to hear. So we want to acknowledge that there's a little bit of a content warning, that we talk about discrimination that has happened to real people. But we really want to spread the awareness. So yeah, thanks for sharing that video, Bree. That is a powerful one.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you, Liz, for, some of these stories will be really hard to hear. So we just want to make that also aware that they can it can be pretty uncomfortable. But we want to show the different ways that people have experienced discrimination and what it could look like if you were to experience it.
And that it's still happening. These are not, 40-year-old cases. These are all very recent.
Yeah, with that being said, the next case we'll talk about is one that was filed in the metropolitan Detroit area and was filed with the Fair Housing Center of Metropolitan Detroit. It was a case in which there was a real estate agent who was representing a Black couple, and when the real estate agent was had arrived at the home before the couple did. And the couple was Ray and Autumn Harris, and they came with their 2 children in January of 2021. The seller made comments to the agent, so the family was not present at the time, but the seller had made comments that there was a Black prospective buyer that recently came to look at the house, and the seller made comments that the car looked like it was from the hood, and he was surprised that it didn't have bullet holes in it. And he said, he was not going to sell his home to such a person. And also to provide context, he and the seller was another couple, and they had owned also the home next door. The agent did warn the seller that he was crossing a line with his comments, and the seller even admitted that his own agent, who was not there, had also warned him to be careful with his statements. So not only did he was warned beforehand that he was making discriminatory statements by his own agent, this agent was also warning him that your comments are inappropriate. And then when the Harrises arrived, the agent first prompted them to tell them to discuss their employment and their education, because she was really afraid that the seller was going to deny the home to them based on his stereotypes. And the wife had told how she had a master's degree in social work, was really trying to sell herself, that she enjoyed maintaining the exterior of her home by planting flowers and taking care of, the outside lawn. And then the seller, after looking around the home, the seller told them that this home had been in his family for a long time, and that he wanted to choose his neighbors since he lived next door. The seller also asked the wife to pull down her mask because it was during COVID, and wrote down a physical description of the couple and their family. And he even told the agent that he writes down the descriptions of all his buyers to know who is making offers, and he puts a star down next to the names of the buyers that he likes. So this is very clearly a case of discrimination based on race, but again, he was using characteristics of people to determine who could buy this home. And, I want to say that when selling a house, I understand that people have, a connection to a home, but that again, should not be a reason to deny somebody a home based on your own biases. The Harrises really wanted to purchase the home despite their interaction with this man and knowing that he could be their next door neighbor. The house was 10 to 15 minutes away from their daughter's schools. It was move-in ready with no repairs, and a beautiful large yard for their children. It had 2 bedrooms upstairs, and it was in a very safe, well-kept neighborhood, which they really enjoyed. They made a full price offer with $2,000 in concessions, and the seller did deny their offer with no reason or counteroffer or even the ability to negotiate. The Harrises did have an ability to negotiate or make an offer without concessions. After their offer, the sellers did modify the listing to indicate they would not accept concessions. However, that was never communicated to them. In the end, the home was sold to a white woman, and the Harrises wanted to live in a community where that home was located. They wanted to continue to look in that type of community, but they did not feel like that was a dream to them because of the discrimination they had experienced. They didn't feel that they would be able to. In the end, they ended up buying a smaller home that needed a lot of repairs. It was farther away from their daughter's school, and it was in a segregated community. This case was filed in federal court, and they had some settlement conferences, and it was settled for a not disclosed amount. Another case here out of California. This is a testing case. So the Fair Housing Council of Riverside County filed a complaint against CADO Real Estate Group, showing that some testers were treated differently. They had testers that posed as African Americans home seekers, and they were less favorably treated than the testers that were posed as white home seekers. They had their test showed that the African American testers were told there were no homes available when there were, and there was also tougher pre-qualification requirements as well compared to the white testers. They all denied that they had, the real estate agents all denied that they engaged in any discriminatory behavior. After the case, the real estate group did have to pay $10,000 to the Fair Housing Council, and the agents were required to attend fair housing training. So
yeah, and this case is really illustrative of the importance of investigating claims of discrimination. And I don't remember if we've talked about what testing is yet, Bree, and I apologize I didn't put that in there. So that's a program that we run with volunteers that get trained to help us investigate complaints. So these are all trained volunteers that go out home shopping. And so in this case, they were crucial to challenging this practice and getting this group to get into compliance with fair housing. That is something that every fair housing center, including our own, undertakes. And if it's something you're interested in and you're not a housing professional, you can reach out and contact us to learn a little bit more and see if you can get involved.
yeah, thank you, Liz. Yes, I was thinking that as I was explaining it, that we had not explained testing. So thank you for that. And then I am now going to turn it over to Liz, and she'll talk about some lending discrimination followed by appraisals and harassment.
Okay, so I'm going to try to take control of the screen here. See if it will let me click around. Whoop, I'm going too fast. Oh no. There we go. Okay, it's very sensitive, so that's good to know. Yeah, so diving into a little bit of the lending side, and again, as Bree has really established for us so well, that it's all about who is protected. So these are all differences in treatment that if they are based on a protected class, your race, your religion, whether you have children, whether or not you're married, if you have a disability, these are fair housing violations. And unfortunately, these are some of the more common violations where people who are just simply seeking to gather information about home loans available can't get it. There's a case coming out of the East Coast where a bank is being challenged because all of its inner city locations do not have any basic loan brochure information at all. People would have to take a bus route that would take about 45 minutes to get to a suburban bank branch to get basic information about home loans. So, a strategic way to withhold information about the ability to get a home loan from the residents of those local neighborhoods. It's really thankfully being challenged. Being a banker refusing to make a mortgage loan or refinance because of a protected class. Any changes in terms or conditions, any different interest rates that are different from what is being offered to others, any points or fees could be discriminatory, not always. We'll talk about discriminatory appraisals of property, refusal to purchase loans or set different terms and conditions for purchasing a loan. So that's often a secondary thing that happens at banks. Discriminating in providing financial assistance for purchases, construction, improvements and repairs. Maintaining a dwelling is a huge effort and an investment, and people can access financing. So those types of loans are also covered under fair housing laws. If it's residential real estate, those candidates for home repair loans should also be treated equally. And, lenders cannot condition the availability of a loan on someone's response to being harassed, which we will also talk about. So I'm hoping this is working. Yeah, so a few more examples. Denying a mortgage or charging that higher interest rate because of the location of where the home is. If it's in a majority minority neighborhood, the denial cannot be based on that, and they can't impose higher interest rates. Providing different customer experiences based on a protected class is problematic. Refusing to consider different types of income. Oftentimes we see a bias both in rental and lending for employment. Oh, uh-oh. Are you taking back over, Bree? That might be safer.
Sorry, I had to take over to turn my camera on.
Oh, okay. So
I
let's have
can't,
you
I
just,
literally lets you take over my,
you're in control.
my entire, my entire
That's okay.
computer. So
There's a
yeah,
few almost too
I can control
Yeah,
it because
Thank
this was a
you.
new thing we were trying, but
Too
it
good to be
literally,
true, Zoom. Okay, sorry about that interruption, but talking about, legal and verifiable income should be qualified, should qualify individuals for total household income. Oh, sorry, can you go back forward?
Yeah, sorry, I was, didn't know how forward I went, so sorry
Yeah,
about that.
nope, I'm on the right slide. So, people with disability related income, which we use for shorthand SSDI, Social Security Disability or Social Security Income, steering a borrower to a loan product with less favorable terms. This really led to a lot of trouble in 2007 and 8. Many of you might remember the housing bubble burst. A lot of people were considered underwater, or they owed more than the house was worth because they had gotten loans that were really predatory. Targeting a minority community for fraudulent home loan modification assistance or bad products is something that we see. Refusing to provide mortgages to a person on parental leave. These are all examples of fair housing violations in lending. And unfortunately, loans with abusive terms and conditions can put people at risk of losing their homes. It's such a huge investment. And so when it's targeted with bad products towards new buyers, vulnerable protected classes, entire neighborhoods sometimes get targeted. It can really kind of rip the rug out from not only that individual or family, but the community. When you have a lot of homes going into foreclosure, it impacts the neighbors who are left behind and really takes a toll on everyone. So predatory loans take advantage of borrowers. You really have to kind of study up a little bit when you're going through the home buying process and take your time and learn a little bit. So there's great first-time home buyer resources out there, good classes we can connect you to, amazing community partners who do this counseling and can help with navigating the process. There's a lot of legalese, legal terms, industry terms that can make it very challenging for people to understand. And while there have been improvements made towards disclosing information about the lending process, it is still difficult. People should be able to access traditional home loans and not be steered towards certain products. They shouldn't be taken advantage of because they are new. They shouldn't be charged excessive rates and kind of tacked on fees or higher fees. It's important that people understand what the true cost is and the terms of the loan so they know what they're going to be paying and accountable for. We've seen lenders approve loans without really taking seriously whether or not somebody could repay that loan with real ability. Convincing borrowers to frequently refinance. So being contacted repeatedly, we've got a good deal for you. We've got a good deal for you. Well, they're also paying thousands of dollars to get those deals. So that can be predatory. Putting terms on the loan that make it difficult to refinance, to adjust when a lower interest rate does come available, that's problematic. And of course, loans that have balloon payments or large payments that come up later in the life of the loan that are completely unaffordable, that can be a huge deal for families and individuals owning homes. And if people try to pay off the loan early, if they're in that fortunate position, they shouldn't be penalized for doing that. So those are all examples of predatory lending. The trend that we started to talk about a moment ago is related to maternity leave. HUD has started kind of tracking a similar trend of cases since 2010, where regularly there are complaints from people who are seeking to get loans or refinance, and they take advantage of being on maternity leave to do so. And unfortunately, in a lot of these cases, the lenders allegedly deny or delay the loans to people who are out because they are pregnant and or on leave. Sometimes a lender allegedly is treating the loan seekers differently by requiring them to end their maternity leave and return to work first in order to be approved for a loan. So these are violations based on federal fair housing protections for familial status and sex or gender. I think we've got a case example. Oh, this was a great campaign that HUD and the National Fair Housing Alliance did to bring awareness of this as an issue. A lot of folks are told by the banks, we don't do this, or you have to do X, Y, and Z, and they don't realize this is an example of, and what they're experiencing is discriminatory. This was a case out of Pennsylvania. A couple living near Philadelphia wanted to do home renovations, and they were seeking a loan from the Police and Fire Federal Credit Union. while the mother was out on maternity leave. The loan was provisionally approved, but the credit union refused to complete it once they learned she was on maternity leave and told them she would have to go back to work and then reapply. She was receiving full salary, so she was out on Family Medical Leave Act and was experiencing no loss of income. Some people have a percentage of income, dropped away while they're out on leave, but this is one of many cases where there was no drastic change in income. She had a firm date set to return to work. This was her second child. They didn't ask about the expected return or what other assets they had that would have enabled the loan to go forward. And again, they kind of doubled down and said, you've got to go back to work. And even further, you have to have 2 pay stubs after you're back at work before we would talk to you about this loan. So a national fair housing law firm, Relman Colfax, filed an administrative complaint with HUD. This is a faster process for them to move this forward. The family ended up going to a different lender. So this is not only a fair housing violation, but not a great business decision. And they wanted to fight back against this. So they filed a HUD complaint based on familial status and disability because the credit union was treating the wife's income as though she was on disability. And after some time had passed, they reached an agreement and the couple received $50,000 in damages. But importantly, the credit union has updated their policies and got training, which is something we always want to see in a case resolution because we don't want to see this happening over and over and over. Also, a significant trend in lending has been disability-based discrimination. HUD has seen a number of complaints alleging discrimination against mortgage applicants who have disability income. They're treated less favorably than individuals without disabilities because they are being asked to provide an invasive amount of information and meet burdensome income documentation requirements. So if we go forward here, we'll get some examples, I think. First, let me explain the protections for people with disabilities are also very broad. Bree talked about how the definition of families with children under the age of 18 is also very intentionally broad. So is this protection for people with disabilities. Legally, it's an individual with a physical or mental impairment that impacts one or more major life activities. So how they walk, bathe, breathe, hear, eat, go to school, go to work, conduct their social life. It can also be somebody who's regarded as having a disability or someone who has a record of having had physical or mental impairment. So a very broad, expanded protection here. We've got a couple of examples, but there's no conclusive list. It's really that impairment that is impacting a major life activity, or if you're assumed to be or you have a record of having had a disability, you would be protected. Here's the case. So out of New Jersey, we have Freedom Mortgage Corporation. This is a national mortgage lender. They are based in New Jersey. They paid over $100,000 to settle allegations that they discriminated against loan applicants with disabilities by requiring them to provide medical or other documentation. Their underwriting policies and practices had different terms and conditions from other applicants for people with disabilities by requiring, among other things, a doctor's note and letters from the Social Security Administration that their disability income would continue for 3 years. That is something that the Social Security Administration will not provide. It's not possible. And also, doctors aren't going to certify that income is going to be available for a patient. So they're asking for this incredibly burdensome documentation. And throughout the course of the case, they found 69 applicants who were subjected to these illegal terms and conditions. So in one case, a loan applicant had provided medical documentation from a Department of Labor, trying to get creative and find any sort of documentation. They had a benefit statement showing regular disability payments since 2009. So years of disability payments going backwards. But Freedom Mortgage stuck to their guns and said, we want to see documentation of future income for at least 3 years. And again, that's not possible. So it was a large settlement. They had kind of 3 different tiers of damages available to the applicants who were denied. And so that's, really fantastic that they found that many people and were able to get a little bit of relief for those folks who had been treated that way. And again, importantly, they changed their underwriting guidelines. This is something that, this mortgage company and many others have done in the past. And hopefully we will start to see the end of this because it's just not possible and they shouldn't be doing this for this type of applicant. So briefly mentioned accommodations earlier. Persons with disabilities in housing can ask for changes to policies, procedures, services, any rules that exist in order for them to have that equal access and consistent availability of housing that we've talked about. So accommodations are automatically going to be the responsibility really of the housing professional or provider, because it's their rules, policies, and procedures. So this is something where a lender should be open to providing large font materials or materials in a specific file format that an electronic reader could provide information to somebody who's seeking lending information, for example. And then on the structural physical side for access, people have the right to ask for changes that would literally allow for them to have equal access to enjoy their unit, the dwelling unit, the condo, the home, and any public or common use areas that would allow for that equal access. So we have a lot of information and resources. I think our next slide kind of shows, these are a couple of great examples. The one on the left is advocacy that we were able to do on behalf of these homeowners who removed the 2 steps that you see in the top picture. They're a little bit hard to see. They wanted to put in a universal design entrance where there were no steps in order for their son, who used a large electronic wheelchair, to come and go more easily. So we were able to advocate and get that HOA to change their mind on their discriminatory behavior. And the one on the right is where we advocated for someone to get a different type of door handle, not a door knob, and a small lip at the bottom of the door so that he could come and go from this entryway in his wheelchair much easier and much safer. There were some times where he was deciding not to leave because it was so challenging to grip and turn the doorknob and to kind of force his way over a flat threshold at the bottom of the door. So as I mentioned, we have tons of resources and tools. If you didn't get our handouts, email, let us know, but we encourage you to visit our website. Or if you're looking for specific information on a topic, feel free to reach out to any of us with an email, and we will get back to you with lots of resources. This is another great campaign from the National Fair Housing Alliance and HUD, highlighting lending discrimination based on race. And, their point is, you're not going to hear someone say we don't make loans in Black neighborhoods, although I'm sure we could probably dig up a case where someone said something quite that obvious. But instead, people might hear your debt to income ratio is too high, or the appraisal said there's inadequate collateral, or you need more money down. So these are things that potentially could be signs of being treated differently or being discriminated against that we wanted to share. This was a new case, and I really encourage you to check out the CNN coverage of this. CNN did the investigation and worked with fair housing testing groups to understand the process. But as a result of their investigation, a class action lawsuit was filed just at the end of last year. This is our largest credit union, Navy Federal Credit Union, who serves more than 13 million members. Military service members, defense personnel, veterans and their families are all qualified for the credit union. The investigative report uncovered that the credit union discriminated against Black and Latino applicants. They had the widest disparity in conventional mortgage approval rates between white and Black borrowers of any major lender in 2022. So that is a #1 position we don't want to see any bank or credit union in. More than 75% of the white borrowers who applied were approved, whereas less than 50% of Black borrowers who applied for the same loan were approved. Notably, the credit union approved a slightly higher percentage of applications from white borrowers who made less than $62,000 a year than it did of Black borrowers who are making more than double that. And CNN also found that Black applicants to the credit union were more than twice as likely to be denied as the white applicants. Again, even when more than a dozen different variables, income, debt to income ratio, property value, down payment percentage, neighborhood characteristics, they were controlling for all those variables and found that the difference in treatment was still starkly there, twice as likely to be denied. The lawsuit is ongoing, and actually the legislature members of Congress have written several letters encouraging all of the federal regulatory agencies to look into this. They just released those letters early in 2024. So they are watching this case very closely, as they should. So if you join us again in the future for a training, hopefully we'll have an update on this, but this is truly astonishing to see this volume of race-based discrimination at our largest national lender. Quickly, I want to talk about appraisals. I'm also keeping an eye on the clock, and please put questions in the Q&A. We love to answer questions. We just want to talk about something that really has gotten a lot of national attention in the last 3 or 4 years, although it's been an issue for decades, is discriminatory appraisals, largely on the basis of race. Appraisals are critical in order for home buying and lending processes to establish the value of a property. It's used as collateral for a home loan. The difference between the property's value and the homeowner's loan amount generally represents the homeowner's equity. And that's a big part of the American dream, is building that equity, being able to leverage your first home into your second home, or use your home's equity to do repairs, to go to college, to use it as a financial tool that helps build generational wealth. It takes into account the overall condition of the home, square footage, lot size, anything that's been added or built into it, the location, the features, and the surrounding amenities. The current presidential administration has put together a task force that's evaluating discriminatory appraisals. The task force is called PAVE, and there's an action plan, a preliminary report, and then an action plan. So those are linked there for you to look into if you're interested. Home loan lenders hire appraisers, so they're separate, independent contractors to provide independent, fair, and objective estimates of market value of a property so that the lenders can evaluate risk. Commonly, appraisers estimate the value of homes by comparing it to similar recently sold properties in comparable neighborhoods, generally close by. And what we're seeing, a couple of screenshots here. This is a case that really blew the lid off, I think, the national conversation, kicked off the national conversation, because a mixed family home got their home appraised for $330,000, which was way below the local average, and it caught their attention. They removed all Black family photos and any items from Black culture, and the white dad stayed home for the appraisal. The second appraisal came back at $465,000, and just that number shocked a lot of people. And really kind of raised this issue. Second case example is out of Chicago. Again, a Black homeowner got 2 different appraisals after removing all evidence of her racial identity in a process that now has become known as whitewashing. And she was able to get a second appraisal that had a $62,000 difference. Nothing changed between these visits other than the removal of the identity of the owner. Third example here, this is out of Oakland, California. $439,000 difference in 2 appraisals out of Oakland, California. So homeowners are often going in with an expectation of what their appraisal amount is going to be. And when they find these, results to be different, they are challenging them, thankfully. This case, I encourage you to watch the video of this interview. These are Dr. Connolly and Dr. Mott experienced the same thing, and they filed a case, and they brought cases against 2020 valuations, the owner, Shane Laham, and Loan Depot. They alleged that they were, again, also treated differently because of their race and also the location of their home. $250,000 difference is just a huge fluctuation that cannot be explained away. Pop ahead here. Roman Colfax just settled that LoanDepot.com, one of the 3 enforcement actions that are being pursued. This is one of the 10 largest residential mortgage lenders in the country. So really grateful they took that case on. They pushed on behalf of Dr. Connolly and Dr. Mott. Dr. Mott was ill at the time this happened and decided to pursue the case on behalf of their children and to not allow this to continue. They alleged that they were discriminated against and that Loan Depot retaliated against them because they didn't overturn their appeal, their request to have a new appraisal conducted. So settlement terms are great, really putting in new practices, getting training for folks, educating applicants on their options about how they can challenge appraisals, making sure they're working with appraisers who are not discriminating and who can prove they don't discriminate. The other 2 cases are pending. And I'm really sorry to say that this announcement of this settlement came 2 weeks after Dr. Mott passed away. And I just really commend her and her husband and her family for standing up for their rights. And I wish that she had known that this part was victorious. And I really appreciate them standing up and sharing their story. I encourage you to watch that video. They're an incredible couple. Briefly talking about harassment in housing, it's prohibited. If people are being discouraged because of race or national origin to either leave their housing in their neighborhood or to give up on their attempts to get that housing, that is a violation of fair housing laws and HUD guidance. It's either the creation of a hostile environment or pushing someone to give up something, this for that. That is often sexual harassment, but it's all prohibited. Anyone who's involved as a housing professional and neighbors can all be held liable for harassment. Let's jump forward to the case example, Bree, if you would. This is a mind-boggling case out of Indiana. It's a huge settlement. It's a neighbor in a subdivision scaring away people who are living there because of a campaign of harassment. People sold their homes to get away from her. She followed children to the bus stop. She verbally threatened people. She was a nuisance for years, scaring people, threatening people. She's a white woman, and she was verbally assaulting and harassing people who were Black and Latino for a couple years. More than 20 people complained, so we can kind of jump forward here. She used slurs, again, verbally scared off prospective homebuyers, called one family daily, threatened the lives of their family, their pets. Both the homeowners association and the management company knew of her behavior and failed to take action, which is also a violation of fair housing laws. So we're looking at well over $500,000 from the individual herself and the management company and HOA. So a huge victory, but we can't undo the harm of what those families experienced. So I'll turn it back over to you, Bree, to talk very quickly about some trends, but I think we'll focus on how to report discrimination.
Yeah, so all this stuff is provided in your PowerPoint handouts. Again, if you didn't receive those, let us know. But briefly, I just want to mention our caseload. We had 140 cases last year with disability, race, and color being our top three. This is a trend we've seen for a few years now. And then to look at our cases by transaction, our caseload is rental, but sales is, about 6% there. So it is still a significant piece of the pie, and then additionally, reasonable accommodations are also a piece of that pie, which could be part of sales. So reasonable accommodations could be in any of these little buckets as well. But I really want to focus on reporting discrimination and filing complaints and what that looks like. Our process, we take complaints anyway, phone, email, letters, any way that you'd like to complain, make a complaint, we will take it. Our services are free. There is no cost to file a complaint. We also accept anonymous complaints from anyone. And we can work with clients directly as well. So if you are working with a client that may be experiencing it and you're working on a different issue, we can also work directly with that client. Our inquiries do go through our enforcement coordinators. And then, the more information we have, the better. And the sooner that we get the information, the better, because there are some statutes of limitations. At the federal level, administratively with HUD, it's a year. The court level, it is 2 years. And then at the state level, it is 6 months administratively through the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, who is the state agency that can, enforcement agency that can take on complaints. And then if you were good to go to court, it is 3 years in the state of Michigan. And I believe Liz may have mentioned this, but retaliation is also protected under fair housing. So if you're exercising your fair housing rights and you're retaliated, that is also included. Some different resolutions that may come of a complaint. There could be some mediation, some litigation with, we have private cooperating attorneys or the DOJ. And then as I talked about administratively, you can file with HUD or the Michigan Department of Civil Rights or even your own local municipality. Some other resolutions could be that property rights could be secured if desired and available. With the current market, it can be challenging because things can go very quickly. But if we can enter in the conversation quickly or MDCR, they can stop that. I don't know if I froze there. They
No,
can
you're
stop.
okay. They can stop the home sale. They have the authority that we
Yeah,
don't
the
have.
authority, yes. A training, as Liz had talked about in some of the cases, training can also be provided. And then there could be policy changes, and then or sometimes there can be also compensation, as we saw in the cases we talked about today. So what are some things that you can do? Remember what happened, record everything, write down names, addresses, numbers, people that were involved, times and dates of comments, any copies of anything. Documentation is important and crucial when filing a fair housing complaint. It is the evidence. And then report it. Call, fax, email us, and we can walk through, you or your client, a series of questions to learn more and provide next steps. Our enforcement coordinators walk through every step of the way with you, whatever way you decide to file. They are your right-hand person in this process. So now we will take some questions and we'll pop the evaluation in the chat there. There is our contact information. Our office is closed to the public, but we are available for appointments. And then also, if you do call our office, make sure to leave a voicemail. We do not follow up with calls that do not leave a voicemail, just because we get a lot of them. So it can be challenging. So leave a voicemail, and you can also contact us via email. Liz and my email is there. If you need to make a complaint and you would like to be anonymous, you could email us directly and we can remove your information. And then also anybody can report discrimination. I don't know if I mentioned that. If you know someone that is experiencing it and you can provide information on their behalf, that is also helpful, and is I think in the one case I talked about, the agent actually ended up making the case or filing the complaint. So it can be any person that's involved in the situation can also file a complaint. And yeah, thank you, everyone. And I'm going to end the recording now, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to let us know.